The glass of champagne felt cold against my palm. Across from me, my sister Celia beamed, her eyes glittering with a fervor I'd never seen before. "To new beginnings," she chirped. I smiled, playing my part. "To new beginnings," I echoed and drank. I smiled and pretended to sip. I had spent this second life being cautious, pouring out drinks when no one was looking. But tonight I let the glass touch my lips. The bitter tang of something foreign hit my tongue. "So it begins." I let my eyes widen. I clutched my throat, made a show of stumbling. I collapsed onto a couch, letting my body go limp, my breathing shallow. Through slitted eyes, I watched Celia kneel beside me, her face a mask of fake concern. "This time the opportunity is mine. I'm the one who saves the vain heir. I'm the one who gets the life of jewels and silks." Outwardly, I was a puppet with cut strings. Inwardly, I was ice. So, Celia was reborn too. If that was true, then in this life, I would happily let her become the bride of Cashin Vane. Or, more accurately, the living blood bank for the entire Vane dynasty. The memories of my first life were scars on my soul. The so-called rescue of Cashin Vane from a dingy alley. His calculated courtship. The wedding I thought was a dream which became a cage. The beatings, the humiliations, the cold, clinical procedures he forced on me for his ailing lover, Julian. The final, searing agony as the fire closed in, while Cashin and his brothers discussed my fate like I was trash. I had woken up in this life a month ago in my old childhood bed. The phantom smell of smoke still clung to me. I'd run to the living room, sobbing, and crushed my mother in a hug. She was alive. Her warmth was real. In the first life, the Vanes had taken her to force my compliance, and she died in a mysterious, nursing home fire. My mission was simple. Stay away from the Vanes, protect my mother, live quietly. But Celia's muttering changed everything. Her poisonous confession, spilled over my drugged body, revealed a lifetime of hidden hatred. The childhood accidents, the bullying, the mountain trap, all her doing. She resented me, resented our mother for loving me, and coveted the gilded hell I'd endured. I let her have it. Liana. Oh no, she's fainted. Too much excitement," she announced to the few remaining guests. "I'll take her home to sleep it off." She maneuvered me out a back door, her grip painfully tight. In the cold alley, she propped me against a dumpster. The pretense of care vanished. "Sleep well, sister," she hissed, her voice giddy with triumph. "While you're dreaming, I'll be changing my destiny. I'm the one who saves the Vane heir tonight. I'm the one who earns that life of luxury. You had your turn. Now it's mine." She ran off toward the very alley where, in another life, I had found Cashin. I waited until her footsteps faded. Then I stood up, wiped my mouth, and walked calmly to my car. I hadn't swallowed enough of the drugged champagne to affect me. I had been waiting for her to make her move. She wanted my cursed fate? I would gift wrap it for her. I did not go home. I drove to a quiet all-night cafe and ordered a black coffee. My mind was a crystal-clear blueprint. Celia believed she was stealing a prize. She had no idea she was volunteering for execution. The next morning I woke with a pounding head. Mom, bless her, fussed over me. "Another nightmare, sweetheart?" "Just a bad dream," I whispered, clinging to her. It was a dream I was determined to rewrite. My plan crystallized. Later, as Mom made breakfast, I checked the clock. In the first life, around this time, I'd been coming home to beg for money for Cashin's hospital bills. Celia would be here soon doing the same. "Mom," I said, smiling, "could we have honey-glazed pork chops for lunch? Would you mind going to the market for the chops?" She laughed. "You little imp, always so sudden." "All right, I'll go." 10 minutes after she left, the door burst open. Celia rushed in, frantic. "Mom? Where's Mom?" I leaned against my doorframe. "She went out." "What happened?" "Why should I tell you?" she snapped, pulling out her phone. Mom's ringtone echoed from her bedroom. Celia stormed in, finding it empty. She spotted a pair of my old, mended jeans on the bed and sneered. "These ratty things are worth fixing?" A cold anger settled in my chest. "What do you want, Celia?" She narrowed her eyes. "You've grown bold. From the moment you drugged me, you stopped being my sister," I said, my voice flat. Her surprise was brief, then she smirked. "Doesn't matter. Soon we won't even be on the same level." "She won't give you any money," I stated. Her smirk vanished. You came back too. So what if I did? You're the Vane family's savior now. Using our family's money would soil that pristine image, don't you think? I let the threat hang. If Cashin Vane found out you had resources but chose to leech off your poor family, do you think he'd still be grateful? A few saved pennies in exchange for the Vane empire is a bargain, Celia. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the greed warring with suspicion. I played my final card, feeding her ego and her narrative. Besides, you died because of me in the last life. I owe you. Consider this debt paid. Her eyes flashed with pure venom. You haven't paid nearly enough. But it worked. She left just before Mom returned. As I ate the honey-glazed pork chops later, the sweet flavor was ash in my mouth. Celia was now entangled with the viper's nest. My quiet escape was no longer an option. I had to be smarter, faster. I had to build a fortress for my mother and find a weapon strong enough to burn the whole damn nest down before it could touch us again. The taste of honey and pork turned to dust on my tongue. Every comforting crunch was a reminder of the fragility of this piece. Celia was now the designated fly walking into the Vane spiderweb, but spiders have long legs. They could still reach out and snatch what they truly wanted, me, my mother, anyone connected to their savior. I couldn't run. Not yet. The Vane network was too vast, their resources bottomless. Disappearing 2 women even abroad would be a game to them. I needed a shield and failing that, a sword. I needed to turn their own enemies against them. I pushed my plate away. Mom, I was thinking. My friend Alara in Canada was just saying how much she misses home cooking. She's all alone out there. What if you visited her for a few weeks? A little holiday. Mom blinked. Canada? Oh, Liana, that's so far. And expensive. I've saved some from my campus job. Please. It would make me feel better knowing you're having an adventure. And you'd be such a comfort to Alara. I layered on the guilt and concern, thinking of Alara's fate in the other life, betrayed, robbed, and left to die in a foreign city. Sending Mom to her might protect them both. After some persuasion, she agreed. I immediately called Alara. Liana? Is everything okay? Her voice, warm and familiar, was a balm. I need a favor. A big one. I explained vaguely that family trouble was brewing and I needed Mom somewhere safe. Alara didn't hesitate. Send her. I've got a guest room with her name on it. Then she sighed. So you finally see it, huh? Celia's true colors. My breath hitched. You knew. I tried to tell you 100 times in subtle ways. But you saw this perfect sister. I couldn't just trash her to you. She chuckled, a sad sound. Remember in high school when everyone said you were leading on the class president? I fought those battles for you daily. A wave of grief for the friend I'd failed washed over me. I was an idiot. You're not an idiot. You just have a heart that wants to see the good. Now stop being mushy. Get your mom on a plane. With Mom's flight booked, my own vulnerability yawned wide. I was alone in the city, a known variable to a reborn Cashin Vane, if he ever turned his gaze from Celia. I had to make my move. My weapon of choice was Richard Thorne. In my first life, the Thorne conglomerate had been the Vane's only real rival. Cashin had destroyed them methodically. Corporate espionage, stolen patents, and finally the kidnapping of Richard Thorne himself, which broke the company's spine. But that was years from now. Currently, Thorne Industries was a fortress. Using knowledge from documents I'd seen in Cashin's study, I crafted an anonymous tip about a Vane mole within Thorne's R&D division. It was bait. I needed a meeting. It took days of calls, dead ends, and polite dismissals. Finally, using a sliver of information about an upcoming hostile takeover bid, I secured 10 minutes in Richard Thorne's austere top-floor office. He was in his 60s with silver hair and eyes like chips of flint. He didn't rise from his massive desk. You have 5 minutes to convince me you're not wasting my time. My palms were damp. I launched into my prepared speech, naming the mole, the division, the specific data being leaked. I outlined the planned kidnapping, suggesting increased security details and varying his routes. His expression didn't change, but the atmosphere tightened. And how would a young woman like you come by such intimate knowledge of my affairs and my rival's ambitions? My sister is involved with Cashin Vane, I said, holding his gaze. I want to prevent her from getting hurt. And I believe our interests align. He steepled his fingers. Our rivalry is business. Not some theatrical feud. Cashin Vane doesn't see the difference, I replied softly. To him, business, pleasure, and cruelty are the same game. He's already planning to have you taken. If nothing changes, it will happen within the week. A long silence stretched. He was evaluating me, weighing the insanity of my claim against the chilling specificity of my details. And what do you want in return for this? Charity, he finally asked. Nothing, I said and meant it. I just want the Vane family to fall. I want Cash and Vane to pay. That is my only fee. He studied me for another eternity. Then a faint, unsettling smile touched his lips. Be my companion, he said, his tone conversational. The floor seemed to drop away. Not an ally. A predator of a different kind. My heart hammered against my ribs. Kept my face still. That's not possible. 30,000 a month. Not for 3 million, I whispered, my voice surprisingly steady. He leaned back, and that's when I saw it, a flicker of something that wasn't lust but a cold, analytical respect. He was testing my mettle, my motives. You're very cautious, he mused. All right. Thank you for the warning. My son will be in touch. Relief, sharp and dizzying, flooded me. I had passed. I'd gambled and won a thread of alliance. His assistant saw me out. On the busy street, I leaned against a wall, trembling. The small utility knife I kept in my jacket pocket was slick in my hand. I had been ready for anything. I had my shield. Now I needed to see if the trap was being sprung on Celia. I went home, my mind racing with timelines and contingencies. But as I put my key in the lock, a chill unrelated to the evening air slithered down my spine. I pushed the door open. In the entryway, side by side like a grotesque display, were a pair of designer stilettos I recognized as Celia's, and a pair of men's hand-stitched Oxfords. My blood turned to ice. I knew those shoes. They were custom-made for one man. Cash and Vane didn't just have his future wife here for a casual visit. He was in my home. The keys slipped from my numb fingers, clattering on the tile with a sound like shattered glass. The sight of those shoes, Celia's defiant heels, and those sinister polished Oxfords paralyzed me. It was too soon. He shouldn't be here, not publicly, not yet. Liana. You're back. Celia's voice was a sugary chirp from the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, a performance of domesticity. Come eat. I cooked. Then he stepped out behind her. Cash and Vane. But it wasn't the Cashin of this timeline, the young heir just awakening in a hospital bed. This was the Cashin from my end, the one who had carved half an empire from blood and cruelty. His eyes, the color of a winter sea, found mine instantly. They held a weary, predatory knowledge that froze the air in my lungs. He's back too. The realization was a sucker punch to the gut. No wonder events had accelerated. No wonder he was here in the heart of my fragile new life. What's with that clumsy face of yours? Celia snapped, her smile vanishing when she looked at me. It reappeared, saccharine sweet, when she turned back to him. This is my boyfriend. Say hello to your future brother-in-law, Liana. Cashin's lips curved. It wasn't a smile, it was the baring of teeth. We're not married yet. No need for such formalities. His voice was a low, smooth baritone that once whispered poison in my ear. Don't just stand there. Sit. He pulled out a chair at our small dining table, his movements languid and utterly commanding. I felt like a rabbit caught in open sight of a wolf. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs were led. I carefully took the seat farthest from him, my back to the wall. Your little sister seems afraid of me, Cashin remarked, his gaze never leaving my face. It was too knowing, dissecting. I'm just shy around strangers, I managed, forcing a brittle smile. An introvert. The sound was dismissive, disbelieving. A cute little sister. I focused on my phone, pretending to scroll, my mind a whirlwind of panic. Why was he so fixated on me? In the first life, his obsession had been a mystery. There were other donors, other viable women. Why choose the one who would grow to hate him so perfectly? Did you come to propose to my sister? I asked, injecting false lightness into my tone. Shouldn't you have a ring? That's right, he said smoothly. Would you give me your blessing? The question was a trap, his eyes glinting with vile amusement. Then why come empty-handed? I gestured vaguely around the room, playing the naive sister. Celia's arms snaked around his shoulders. Ethan, why are you staring at my sister so much? Is she prettier than me? A cold dread pooled in my stomach. I saw it then, a faint, angry red mark on her wrist, peeking out from her sleeve. He was already marking her, breaking her in. Of course not, sweetheart, Cashin purred, his hand sliding possessively to her waist. You're the most beautiful. The atmosphere curdled, thick with a performative, threatening intimacy. He was testing boundaries, flaunting his control and watching for my reaction. When Celia giggled and sashayed back to the kitchen, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur meant only for me. Liana. You came back too. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, cold and final. My heart stopped. Back. I choked out. This is my home. Of course I came back. I'm not an idiot, he said, his smirk widening. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. He pulled out a coil of black leather. The world shrank to that object. A collar. The collar. The one he'd fastened around my neck after they took my mother. The symbol of my utter subjugation. The leather was worn, familiar. He'd kept it. Brought it here. Do you raise pets now? I asked, my voice a thin thread of sound. That's right, he said, standing. He began to walk around the table toward me, a panther stalking. But one of them ran away. And left another dog pretending to take her place. He was inches away now, his shadow engulfing me. She was my favorite. How could she think of escaping? His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. His grip was iron, bruising. I jerked back, my knee hitting the table leg. He yanked me closer. Cashin, dinner's ready. Celia's call from the kitchen was a lifeline. He froze. For 1 second the pressure on my wrist lessened. Then he released me, stepping back as if nothing had happened, that cold smile back in place. We'll continue this later, little sister. I didn't wait. I fled to my room, locking the door with trembling hands. I slid down to the floor, back against the wood, gasping for air. The phantom feel of the collar against my skin, the smell of his cologne, the absolute certainty in his eyes. He knew. He knew everything. My alliance with Thorn was a sapling. Cashin was a hurricane. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slipping on the screen. I typed a message to the contact Richard Thorn's assistant had given me, labeled only R. Thorn Jr. The target is active. He's unhinged. Move faster than planned. A minute later my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello. I whispered. This is Rowan Thorn. The voice was young, crisp, businesslike. My father asked me to relay that the individual you identified has been detained. The information was correct. Relief, sharp and temporary. He's here. At my home. Cashin Vane is with you? Rowan's tone sharpened. Yes. Can you? Is there anything you can do? We'll accelerate phase 2. You'll hear within 48 hours. Stay cautious. A heavy, deliberate knock rattled my door. Knock. 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 My blood turned to ice. Who is it? I called, my voice strangled. Liana. Cashin's voice oozed through the wood, dark and intimate. Come eat. It was the voice from all my nightmares. I pressed my fist to my mouth to stop a whimper. The phone was silent in my hand. 48 hours was an eternity. I was trapped in a house with 2 monsters, one who hated me blindly and one who saw me with terrifying clarity. The game had changed. It was no longer about steering Celia into a trap. It was about surviving a predator who had already tasted my blood in another life and had come back for more. The shield I'd built felt paper-thin. The sword I'd sought was still being forged. And the viper was coiled in my living room, waiting for me to step out. The knock echoed again, a death knell against the thin wood of my door. Don't be rude. I stayed silent, pressed against the door, my breath held. I heard a soft, dark chuckle from the other side, then the sound of his footsteps receding. The tension didn't leave my body. It coiled tighter. He was playing with me, letting me think I had a sanctuary. I knew better. Cashin Vane didn't respect doors. For 2 days I lived like a ghost in my own home. I emerged only when necessary, timing my movements for when Celia was loudly present, a buffer against his direct attention. He watched me constantly, his gaze a physical weight. He made pointed, double-edged comments about loyalty, about pets who forget their masters, about the fleeting nature of safety. Rowan Thorn's 48-hour deadline came and went with no news. The silence was deafening. Had the Thorns been neutralized already? Had my gamble failed? On the 3rd morning, as I was taking out the trash, a rare, furtive trip outside, a wave of dizziness hit me. The world tilted, then exploded into pain at the back of my skull. The last thing I saw was the concrete of the alley rushing up to meet me. I woke to the smell of dust, mildew and rust. My head throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I was on a cold, gritty floor, my wrists bound tightly behind my back. An abandoned warehouse. I could tell by the vast, echoing emptiness and the faded Unit 12 stenciled on the wall in peeling paint. Outside, faintly, I could hear the familiar jingle from the discount supermarket 3 blocks from my house. He hadn't even taken me far. The arrogance of it was staggering. I tested the ropes. Professionally done. No give. I tried to roll, to make noise, to bang against the metal door I could make out in the dim light. My body was weak, still fuzzy from whatever drug he'd used. Then the sound. The crisp, rhythmic tap of leather soles on concrete. A sound etched into my soul from 1,000 walkings of his study, 1,000 approaches in the lab. My blood didn't run cold, it crystallized. He emerged from the shadows, and the sight of him was almost a relief in its horrific familiarity. This was the Cashin from my darkest memories. His impeccable suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled. The polished air was gone, replaced by the cornered, feral beast. But a beast was at its most dangerous when wounded. He crouched before me, grabbed a fistful of my hair and wrenched my head up. The pain was bright and sharp. "Liana," he breathed, his voice a serpent's whisper. "Still planning to run?" He looked terrible, but his eyes burned with a manic, unholy fire. "You and Richard Thorne. Working together." His free hand came up, tracing the line of my jaw with a mockery of tenderness. "Did he treat you well? Better than I did?" Every cell in my body recoiled. "Why did you betray me?" he hissed, his grip tightening on my hair. "I treated you so well." Tears of pain and rage welled up, spilling over. He laughed, a dry, cracking sound, and leaned in so close I could feel his breath on my skin. The violation was so profound I couldn't even scream. "You missed me too, didn't you?" When I didn't answer, his expression darkened. He yanked my head sideways and slammed it against the concrete wall. White light fractured my vision. A warm, wet trickle started at my temple. The coppery taste of blood filled my mouth. "Where's Julian?" I slurred, referring to his lover, the reason for my stolen kidney. "Him." Cashin's smirk was grotesque. "Oh, he's gone." He leaned close, his breath cold in my ear. "Let's just say I made sure nobody would ever find him again." He paused, savoring my horror. "You want to know why I killed him and not you? Because he wanted your heart. And you." His voice dropped to a possessive growl. "You belong to me," he murmured. "Letting him use you a little was one thing. But your heart, well, I don't share what's mine." He was beyond madness. He was a void where humanity should have been. "So you must be angry," he continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Angry about how things ended last time. But you're clever, Liana. Too clever. You found a way to escape. If I didn't kill you, it would have been me." He chuckled. "Celia still thinks you're a fool. But she's the idiot. You let her write to me, didn't you? You've never even liked champagne." The accuracy was terrifying. He saw every move. "In the last life before you died, she strangled you. She forced you to sign over money. Your mother's death. She helped." He watched the shock and grief contort my face, and his grin widened. "Of course you want revenge. You never forget a grudge. Everyone pays." He listed my secret victories like a proud teacher. The man who killed Alara, dead from a suspicious overexertion, after a large deposit hit his account. Rowan Thorne's childhood fondness for me, which I was now exploiting. "You left Rowan a little time bomb, didn't you?" he mused. "When will it go off? After I die? Or after you escape?" He tilted his head. "And what about me, Liana? How do you plan your revenge on me? Don't tell me you think bankrupting me through the thorns is enough. I never cared about the vain money." He saw the flicker of fear in my eyes, the confirmation that he'd unraveled my entire strategy. "You're scared because I'm right. You're overthinking," I forced out, my voice ragged. "I'm not that smart. Not that smart." He laughed, a genuine chilling sound. "No, you're even smarter. You know everything about me. The only thing you don't know." He leaned in until his nose almost touched mine, his voice a guttural whisper. "Is that I'm a complete psychopath." He straightened up, looking down at me with a twisted admiration. "If you weren't so smart, I wouldn't want to marry you. Pets don't need marriage." I gathered the last dregs of my defiance. I met his gaze and smiled, a thin, bloody smile. "And you're an idiot. You're about to die and don't even know it." His eyes lit up with a perverse delight. "Oh really? Then let's die together. He moved to grab my head again to slam it into the wall and finish it. But this time my hands were already free. The ropes had been cut minutes ago, sawed through on a sharp piece of metal I'd found and hidden under my leg. The weakness, the dizziness, partly real, partly a performance. As he lunged, my right hand flicked upward. The small decorative bangle on my wrist snapped open at a hidden pressure point, the central flower blossom releasing a 3-inch needle-sharp blade I'd had custom-made for this moment for him. I didn't aim for his heart or his neck. I aimed for his temple. There was a jolt of resistance, then sudden release. His eyes, wide with a shock that mirrored my own, locked onto mine, then went strangely empty. He collapsed, heavy and unmoving as I yanked my hand back, shaking. I shoved him off, scrambling back. The warehouse was silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing and the distant supermarket jingle. The monster was dead. By my hand. I stumbled to the heavy door, shoved it open and collapsed into the alley. Sunlight, harsh and real, stabbed my eyes. I saw blurry shapes, people. I tried to call out, but only a croak emerged. I raised a trembling, bloodied hand. Someone shouted. Footsteps pounded toward me. The world swam, the blue of the sky the last thing I saw before darkness took me again. But this time, it was a darkness edged with the blazing, triumphant light of a new dawn. I surfaced to the sterile smell of antiseptic and the steady, reassuring beep of a heart monitor. The light was soft, filtered through a hospital room blind. For a dizzying moment I was back in the lab, trapped. Panic clawed up my throat. Easy. You're safe. The voice was male, calm, unfamiliar. I turned my head, wincing at the bolt of pain. A man sat in the chair beside my bed. He was in his late 20s, with sandy hair and sharp, intelligent features that held a hint of familiar severity. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that spoke of money, but his posture was relaxed, his expression one of guarded concern. Rowan Thorne, he said, answering my silent question. You've been out for about 18 hours. You have a concussion, some bruised ribs and needed stitches. But you'll recover. My voice was a rasp. Cashin. Deceased. The police found him in the warehouse. Self-defense is the preliminary finding, given your injuries and the restraints. His gaze was penetrating. It's fortunate someone heard you and called for help when you stumbled out. Fortunate, I echoed, the word tasting bitter. Nothing about this was fortune. It was a calculation that had nearly cost me everything. The veins. In free fall. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Your information was precise. With Cashin gone and our evidence going public, the authorities moved swiftly. His eldest brother was arrested this morning for securities fraud and embezzlement. Several other key figures have been detained. Their assets are being frozen. It's a complete collapse. The relief was so profound it felt like a physical unclenching of every muscle in my body. Tears welled, hot and silent, tracking down into my hairline. The great, devouring beast was beheaded and bleeding out. My mother was safe. Blair was safe. Your mother is on her way back from Canada, Rowan continued gently. We contacted her. She's worried, but we assured her you were stable. Thank you, I whispered, the words utterly inadequate. He nodded, then his expression grew more serious. There are things we need to discuss. The time bomb you left for my father. He held up a hand before I could speak. The insider information on the Varick deal. The data was flawless, but the timing was designed to maximize damage to Vane interests while protecting ours. A very elegant piece of corporate warfare. My father is impressed. I stayed silent, watching him. This was the reckoning. Cashin Vane suggested you were using me. Us. He leaned forward slightly. He implied your revenge included manipulating the Thorne family for your own ends. I took a shallow breath, the ache in my ribs a sharp reminder of my vulnerability. I needed an ally strong enough to break them. I offered you the weapon to do it. My motive was their destruction. Your motive was business and survival. They aligned. Was I using you? Yes. Were you using my information to secure your own position and destroy a rival? Also yes. I met his gaze. I never lied to your father. I wanted Cashin Vane dead. I achieved that. Everything else was a means to that end. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze analytical, weighing. Then he leaned back. A pragmatic answer. My father appreciates pragmatism. He also appreciates loyalty. You could have vanished after giving us the initial information. You stayed, you warned us when Cashin was active, and you took the final risk yourself. He paused. He's offering you a position. A consultant role in our strategic security division. Your unique perspective on certain personalities and their methods would be valuable. It was an offer I hadn't dared to dream of. Not just safety but a place. A purpose built on my hard-won horrific knowledge. A chance to ensure no one else became a Cashin Vane's prey. What about Celia? I asked, the name ash in my mouth. Rowan's expression tightened. She was taken in for questioning. She's hysterical, claiming she knew nothing, that she was a victim. The evidence suggests she was largely oblivious to the depths of Cashin's activities, though deeply complicit in her own greed. She's been released, but her association with a major scandal and a deceased murderer has evaporated her social and professional prospects. She's effectively ruined. A hollow satisfaction settled in me. Not the bloody vengeance I'd once craved, but a poetic justice. She'd wanted the gilded life so badly she'd sell her soul for it. Now she had the ashes. I'll consider the offer, I said finally. After I see my mother. After I breathe. Of course. Rowan stood. Take your time. We'll be in touch. At the door he turned. For what it's worth, Liana. I'm glad you stumbled out of that warehouse. After he left, the room was quiet. The beeping monitor marked the steady rhythm of a heart that was still beating against all odds. I had survived the Viper. I had burned the nest. The future, for the first time in 2 lifetimes, was a blank page, not a prison sentence. But as I lay there, the cold seed of a final unanswered question took root. Cashin's words, "You're the dog I loved most." It had been possession, obsession, a sickness. But in his twisted psychopathic logic, it had been a form of love. And in my quest for vengeance, in my cold manipulation of Celia and my strategic alliance with the Thorns, had I become a reflection of that same cold calculation? I had won. I was free. But as I stared at the sterile white ceiling, I wondered if the girl who just wanted to save her mother had been left in that warehouse, next to the monster's corpse. The hospital discharged me 2 days later into my mother's frantic, tearful embrace. She'd aged a decade in a week. Holding her, feeling her tremble, the last shards of ice around my heart finally began to thaw. This was the point. She was alive and she was here. We went home. The house felt different, lighter but haunted. I could still see the ghost of Cashin's Oxfords in the entryway, sense his predatory gaze in the living room. Mom wanted to sell, to move far away. I agreed. This place was a tomb for 2 versions of me, the naive girl and the vengeful strategist. In the quiet weeks of recovery, I thought about Rowan Thorne's offer. A consultant. Using my nightmare as a resume. The idea was both repulsive and empowering. I could lock the horror in a box marked professional experience, or I could let it define me. I hadn't decided. Celia tried to call. Once. I deleted the voicemail unplayed. Her fate was her own. The sister I loved had never existed. She was a figment of my hopeful imagination. The real Celia was adrift in the consequences of her own venom, and I felt nothing for her but a vast, empty silence. One afternoon, a courier delivered a small, elegant box. No return address. Inside, nestled on velvet, was my bangle. It had been cleaned, polished, the tiny mechanism repaired and oiled. A plain white card lay underneath. A tool should be kept sharp. R.T. Rowan Thorne. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a statement. He saw the weapon I had become and he respected it. He was offering me the choice to keep it sheathed or to wear it in his service. The clarity of it was refreshing. A month after the warehouse, I met him for coffee. He looked less like a corporate heir and more like a person, his sleeves rolled up, a faint tiredness around his eyes. The Vane Empire is effectively dismantled, he reported. Assets sold, name toxic. It's over. Thank you, I said. And I meant it for more than the update. Have you considered our offer? I stirred my coffee, watching the swirl. I have. I'll take it. But on my terms. Part-time, remote to start. I need to rebuild a life first. A real one. He nodded, a genuine smile touching his eyes. That's acceptable. Welcome to Thorn Strategic, Liana. It felt like a beginning, not a surrender. The true work of reclamation happened slowly. I went back to school, finishing the degree I'd abandoned in another life. I took up gardening with my mother, our hands in the dirt, nurturing life instead of plotting death. Some nights I still woke screaming, the smell of smoke and leather in my nostrils. but now I could get up, make tea, and sit on the porch until the dawn chased the ghosts away. I began writing. Not strategies or secrets, but stories. Fiction. I poured the darkness, the fear, the twisted psychology of Cashin, and even the bitter betrayal of Celia onto the page. It was an exorcism. To my shock, it started to sell. My unique perspective found an audience. One evening, almost a year later, I was signing books at a small local shop. A woman approached, her eyes red-rimmed. She placed a book in front of me. Your story. The sister who was drugged, the manipulative husband. It helped me. I felt seen. I left. Her voice broke. I signed her book, my hand steady. For your new dawn, I wrote. She hugged me, a quick, fierce thing, and left. As I watched her go, Rowan, who had come for moral support, leaned against a bookshelf. See? You're not just breaking things down. You're building something too. He was right. The vengeance was complete. The survival was assured. But this connection, this fragile thread of understanding spun from my pain, this was something else. This was living. I sold the old house. Mom and I moved to a cottage near the sea with a garden and too many windows. The Thorn consultancy work was challenging, satisfying in a chess match kind of way. The writing was my soul. Cashin's face faded, becoming a character in my past, both real and fictional. Celia's name appeared once in a news snippet about a petty fraud case. I felt a distant pang, not of sympathy, but of sorrow for the wasted lives we both could have had. One bright morning, I was on the porch, my laptop open, the sea sparkling in the distance. My mother was humming inside, baking bread. The scent of yeast and salt air mingled. My phone buzzed. A text from Rowan. New potential threat profile. Reminds me of a certain someone's modus operandi. Care to consult? I looked at the screen, then out at the vast blue horizon. I typed back, send the files. I'll take a look this afternoon. Then I saved my document, closed the laptop, and went inside to steal a slice of warm bread. The monster was dead. The trap was sprung. The future was mine to write, one word, one choice, one peaceful breath at a time. I had not just survived the fire. I had used its heat to forge myself anew. I was Liana, no one's savior, no one's pet, no one's victim. I was simply finally free.